For nearly a decade, Austin Lee Russell, better known to millions as Chumlee, was the unassuming heart of the Pawn Stars empire. While Rick Harrison calculated profit margins and Corey Harrison barked orders, Chumlee slouched in the background, offering deadpan one-liners and an almost childlike enthusiasm for vintage pinball machines. He was the court jester of the gold and silver pawn shop, and America loved him for it. But in March 2016, that carefully constructed image of a harmless, overweight goofball shattered in a single morning. That was the day Las Vegas police executed a search warrant on his home, expecting to find evidence of a sexual assault. Instead, they uncovered a hidden arsenal and a stash of narcotics that would trigger 20 felony charges. The public assumed this was the end of Chumlee's story. They were wrong. The raid was merely the opening scene of a much deeper, darker, and ultimately redemptive saga that would test his freedom, his health, and his very identity. To understand how Chumlee ended up facing a judge, one must first understand the relentless machinery of his rise. Born in Henderson, Nevada, in 1982, Russell grew up in the shadow of the Las Vegas Strip, a city built on illusion and risk. He was a self-described fat kid who found solace in video games and sneakers. The nickname Chumlee, derived from the walrus in the cartoon Tennessee Tuxedo, was a schoolyard jab that he eventually weaponized into a brand. Before the cameras ever rolled, his work ethic was ferocious. In interviews documented by the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Russell detailed working double shifts 8 hours at a Quiznos sandwich shop, followed by 4 hours cleaning floors at the Harrison family's pawn shop. He once clocked 135 consecutive days without a day off. This wasn't the behavior of a lazy slacker. It was the survival instinct of a man who knew that in Las Vegas, luck runs out, but sweat equity endures. When Pawn Stars premiered on the History Channel in 2009, producers initially saw Chumlee as a sidekick comic relief to offset Rick's stern negotiation tactics. But the audience saw something else: authenticity. While other reality stars manufactured drama, Chumlee's confusion over vintage Civil War swords or his genuine glee over a 1980s arcade cabinet felt real. By 2012, he was outselling his co-stars in merchandise, moving thousands of bobbleheads and t-shirts monthly. According to financial disclosures from the show's production company, Chumlee strategically sold half of his merchandise rights to Rick Harrison for $155,000, a move that demonstrated a business acumen the show rarely highlighted. He wasn't just the fool, he was the franchise's secret weapon. But the pressure of that success, combined with the recent death of his father from pancreatic cancer just weeks before the show aired, created a volatile psychological cocktail. The fame that saved him was also quietly isolating him. The seeds of his 2016 downfall were planted years before the police knocked on his door. Court records obtained by Clark County officials show that Chumlee had a prior brush with the law in 2008, arrested on a misdemeanor loitering charge related to solicitation. At the time, it was a footnote, a minor slip for a nobody. But by 2013, as his net worth climbed towards 7 figures, his behavior began to shift. Friends and former employees of the pawn shop told TMZ that Chumlee had become increasingly reclusive, spending less time at the shop's social events and more time in the sprawling home he bought in the Las Vegas Valley. He began collecting not just sneakers and arcade games, but firearms. This was not a political statement. It was a symptom of paranoia. The same man who laughed at lowball offers on television was sleeping in a house fortified with a vault, terrified of the public who adored him. The raid on March 9, 2016, remains one of the most bizarre celebrity criminal investigations in recent memory. Police arrived with a warrant based on a sexual assault allegation from a woman who claimed she had been assaulted at Russell's home. That allegation would later be dropped entirely due to a lack of evidence and the accuser's refusal to cooperate. However, during the lawful search for evidence of that crime, officers discovered what the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department described as a significant narcotics distribution setup. In the house, they found 19.8 grams of marijuana, multiple Xanax pills, methamphetamine, and a .45 caliber pistol. But the shock came when they breached a locked room, what Chumlee reportedly called his man cave. Inside, stacked against walls lined with rare sneakers and autographed guitars, were 12 firearms. Most critically, court records indicate that several of these guns were unregistered, including an assault-style rifle. Chumlee, a convicted felon in the making, was suddenly facing 20 felony counts, 10 for drug possession and 10 for weapon violations. If convicted on all counts, the 33-year-old reality star faced decades in a Nevada state prison. The legal strategy that followed was a masterclass in crisis management. While the media painted him as a drug kingpin, Chumlee's attorney, David Chesnoff, went to work. Chesnoff, a legendary Las Vegas defender known for representing high-rolling clients, immediately distanced his client from the sexual assault claim, ensuring that narrative died quickly. Then, he flipped the script on the drug charges. Instead of contesting the search, Chumlee agreed to a plea bargain that was finalized in May 2016. The deal was stunning in its leniency: plead no contest to 1 count of misdemeanor drug possession and 1 count of failure to register a firearm. In exchange, the remaining 18 felonies were dismissed. Chumlee was sentenced to probation, fines, and mandatory drug counseling. The judge's rationale, documented in court transcripts, hinged on the fact that Russell had no significant prior felony history and that the weapons were not used in a violent crime. Chumlee walked out of the courthouse a free man, but the victory was hollow. He had lost his reputation, and more frighteningly, he was losing his life. This is where the story deviates from a typical celebrity meltdown. Most reality stars who face felony charges fade into obscurity, hosting sad podcasts or selling cameo videos. Chumlee did the opposite. He realized that the legal troubles were just a symptom of a much larger disease: his health. At the time of the raid, Chumlee weighed approximately 350 pounds. He was pre-diabetic, suffering from high blood pressure, and struggling to walk the length of the pawn shop floor without losing his breath. In a 2018 interview with People magazine, he revealed that the raid was a wake-up call that forced him to look in the mirror. He didn't just see a criminal defendant, he saw a man who was eating himself into an early grave. He made a drastic, life-altering decision: gastric sleeve surgery, performed at Blossom Bariatrics in Las Vegas. The procedure removed 80% of his stomach. But unlike many celebrities who rely solely on the scalpel, Chumlee combined the surgery with a rigorous diet and exercise regimen. He started walking miles every morning, cut out sugar, and began lifting weights. The transformation was visceral. Over 18 months he dropped over 150 pounds. The man who once couldn't tie his shoes without sweating was now posting gym selfies. The physical change was so extreme that fans accused the show of using a body double. But physical health was only half the battle. The psychological recovery required a different kind of surgery: cutting ties with his past environment. In 2017, just a year after the raid, Chumlee opened Chumlee's Candy on the Boulevard, a retro sweet shop located directly across from the pawn shop. Business filings with the Nevada Secretary of State show that he incorporated the venture as Chumlee LLC, diversifying his income away from the volatility of reality TV. The store became a pilgrimage site for tourists, offering nostalgic candies and branded merchandise. For Chumlee, the store served a psychological purpose. It gave him a reason to be upright and sober. He worked the counter himself, interacting with fans on his own terms, in a controlled environment where he was the boss, not the punchline. His personal life also underwent a dramatic realignment. Following the legal fallout, Chumlee began a relationship with Olivia Radiman, a student and photographer. The two became engaged in 2018, with Chumlee proposing in Hawaii with a 1.5-carat diamond ring. For a brief period, it seemed the redemption arc was complete. The felon turned fitness guru turned loving fiancé. However, life rarely follows a script. By 2020, observant fans noticed that Chumlee and Radiman had quietly purged each other's photos from their social media accounts. Without a press release or a dramatic court filing, the engagement ended. Radaman was later photographed in Europe with professional poker player Jake Schindler, while Chumlee remained in Las Vegas, focused on work. The breakup, while painful, did not trigger a relapse. Unlike his 2016 collapse, where personal stress led to legal disaster, the 2020 split showed a new level of maturity. He weathered the storm privately and continued filming. The ultimate proof that Chumlee's legal troubles were merely a chapter, not the conclusion, is his current status in the entertainment industry. As of 2024, he remains a central figure in the Pawn Stars universe, starring in the spin-off Pawn Stars Do America. The series, which aired on the History Channel, follows Chumlee, Rick, and Corey as they travel across the country buying rare artifacts. The show requires intense travel, sometimes 3 weeks on the road, which would have been impossible for the 350-pound drug-using version of Chumlee. Today, he manages the schedule with ease. Furthermore, he has pivoted into the world of digital collectibles and gaming. In 2023, he launched a Kickstarter campaign for Chumlee's adventure The Quest for Pinky, a retro-style video game featuring his pet dog. It is a niche project, but it represents the ultimate luxury creative control. Looking at the financial records, the transformation is quantifiable. Despite the legal fees, the loss of endorsement deals, and the cost of his surgery, Chumlee's net worth is estimated by financial trackers like Celebrity Net Worth to be around $5 million. That wealth is not derived from a trust fund or a lucky break. It is derived from resilience. He owns real estate, a profitable retail store, and a share of the Pawn Stars royalties. More importantly, he has achieved something that few reality stars ever do. He has earned the respect of his peers. Rick Harrison, who once viewed Chumlee as a liability, now speaks of him as a business partner. The felony charges that once threatened to define him are now a cautionary tale he tells to young fans about the dangers of fame. In the end, the story of Chumlee is not really about drugs or guns. It is about the terrifying gap between public perception and private reality. For years, America laughed at the fat guy on the couch. They never saw the man grieving his father, the workaholic burning out, or the target of a police raid sleeping with a loaded gun because he was afraid of the dark. The legal troubles exposed that gap violently, but unlike so many Las Vegas stories that end in tragedy, Chumlee survived. He walked through the fire of a felony charge, a health crisis, and a broken engagement, and emerged on the other side. Today, when you watch Pawn Stars, you aren't looking at the comic relief anymore. You are looking at a survivor. The raid wasn't the end. It was the terrifying, necessary beginning of the rest of his life,